The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection.
Brett Lovett, thanks for joining us on Knockin' Doors Down, good sir.
Hey, guys. Wow, what a privilege to be here. All I can say is thank you.
No, privilege is all ours. And we're going to get into the amazing work you do with reconnecting people. Here's where I want to start. I've been doing this Big Book AA study group, and this stuck out to me last night, and I thought it was a cool thing to talk about. It starts, the joy of living we really have, even under pressure and difficulty. I have seen hundreds of families set their feet in the path that really goes somewhere, have seen the most impossible domestic situations righted, feuds and bitterness of all sorts wiped out. I've seen men come out of asylums and resume a vital place in the lives of their families and communities. And when I read that, I was like, that's what you do.
That's pretty well said right there. That's well read and well said, well articulated.
So tell us a little bit more about the work that you are doing. I mean, we're talking about, reconnecting families. And I know from our talks, it's been people that have had addiction and other things. And like you're telling Mikey and I, there's world leaders trying to solve world problems, and they're not really getting to the root of it all. Purpose.
Right. That's a great question. I appreciate the platform that you two offer through this show. And I hope we can convey, I'm going to try to convey as much pertinent information here as I can. And I don't mean to hog the conversation. So if I'm talking too much, you guys just stop, because I got plenty to say in this area. But let's start here. Yeah. When we look out at when Family Reconcile looks out at the world, that's what we see. We see a lot of people running around trying to figure out what's wrong. Why are things, countries can't get along, right? And there's all this division, and we see, do you not, and you correct me, or if you think that you see something different, you tell me. But you see division within our own area of living, right? People are divided more now than ever before. So isn't that interesting? That we live in the most technologically advanced time in all of civilization, but we are ironically the most isolated society we've ever been. And it's because of that isolation, it's creating this disconnection. And when people are disconnected, things really start to fall apart. And we believe that is the root cause of the issues. Now, people may say, well, it's this issue, or it's global warming, or it's this, this person is mean, or it could be, people may say a bunch of things, right?
I was actually going to say COVID and politics is the most I've ever seen divided since I've been alive, at least this country.
That's right. That's right.
That would just be my opinion. I'm not saying that's what it is, but
it's certainly a factor. I mean, a massive contributing factor. So if we were, think about it like this, Mike, if we were already kind of down this disconnected road, think of how much COVID has exacerbated that.
Sure. Yeah.
So whatever these issues that we had prior, it's all been exacerbated. So, you want to use a study, go back to Rome. So Rome is the only empire never conquered externally. She fell from within. The family unit decayed. Moral decay of the family unit over 500 years slowly caused her to just basically implode from within. So we are well down as a society. We are well down that road already. There's a famous Spanish philosopher named George Santayana, and he said, those that do not learn, and you'll recognize this quote, those who do not learn from society are doomed to repeat it. Right. And that's really what Family Reconcile is trying to do. We're not just a little local, operation. We are trying to, internationally make a footprint here and get the understanding and the focus on what the real issue is, which is connection, loss of connection with each other.
I couldn't agree more. The pandemic has especially on those of us that struggle with mental health, Mikey and I, both anxiety,
Oh yeah, anxiety riddled, baby.
elevated it. I had bouts of depression, falling off. I know so many other people that have fell off their sobriety because of it. And it is because of that isolation. Like, I need my group. Thank goodness for this technology, how we're able to talk in different parts of the country, because it brought back that ability to connect. You know, I can connect with my friend here in person, but I also need people in my circle that are in recovery to talk with and continue feeling that sense of purpose. You know what I'm saying? And I think so many people lost that during this, you know, the not being able to go to work, being of service there, the people struggling to bring income in. I know many men and women that really hurt them, and they didn't feel that they were serving their family. And in losing that was a reason that they fell off, a very valid reason.
And you mentioned the word, you mentioned the word purpose there. And this is something I've told the two of you, but maybe the listeners can appreciate this, is when we lose connection, we lose purpose, as you mentioned. And when we lose purpose, we slowly start to perish physically, slowly start to perish. So is that a critical factor, having that purpose that you talked about? Absolutely. Because if we don't fix that, now we're into 35% more likelihood of perishing earlier, the studies show. So this is critical to not just to living longer, not just to, having a few people around, or we're talking about why life exists. We exist to connect. So we're doing it here. We're appreciative, as you said, for this technology. But we also have a lot to pay attention to. But if we pay attention more to this, to the connection part, then we're laying a foundation to make the improvements that we need to see. If you don't mind, I was thinking about in relation to addiction, or those who struggle with substance abuse or any kind of abuse. Think about this: when people go in and out of the hospitals regularly. When you're in the hospital, if you're being treated for something severe, you're getting the most potent, you're getting the highest form of whatever let's say the opioid or the pain management, that they're providing somebody. So if addiction was just about, hey, a person takes the substance and now they're addicted, well, then everybody coming out of the hospital would be a raging addict, right? So it's obviously not just the application or the taking of a substance that creates addiction. What we're finding and what's being shown is that it's that addiction, or whatever the substance is that's being abused, is replacing a loss of something else, and that's the connection. So addiction is something that yes, is biological in a few areas, but it has less to do with biological and more to do with circumstance or this connection thing. So I just wanted to make that clear, that's kind of where, that's our mentality. That's how we think. This isn't about, hey, we're going to fix this through drugs, or there's, it's just that your brain is misfiring and you have a glitch in your brain. No, you're not. There's nothing wrong with you. It's that those are signals: depression, anxiety, looking for things to deal with these inner feelings. Those are signals. That's not something wrong with you. And that's one of the fundamental things we try to lay right out front with our mentoring program in Family Reconcile. That you're not a glitch. You're somebody. Those are signals, and we need to address them. And they likely are found within connection. So then we start looking at family relationships. We start looking at what may have caused them to look into a substance to cover over a loss of connection somewhere else.
Yeah, there was a really good saying that was dropped on me a little bit ago, was those without purpose seek pleasure. And so I could relate to that in going it, like, I didn't want to feel this. So, I wanted to feel some pleasure to take that pain away. Now, with that said, how much within your work with family reconciliation are you seeing trauma backgrounds with a lot of these people and how that's caused a lot of that divide or isolation and self-isolation?
That's a great question, Jason. Just off the top of my head, I'd probably say at least half. It's probably more. But it's probably more, maybe closer to 60 to 70% trauma, because trauma is a broad word, right? So
Sure.
Something could have happened to you or you experienced that was traumatic. Maybe I experienced it. It's not as traumatic, so I don't qualify as traumatic, right? So there's a little bit of a gray area with trauma, but it's at least half, if not more. And it is an important part that plays into how people make decisions. Most of us make, and again, this is, we're going into research areas here, but most of us make decisions today based on our past. You agree with that? Most of us make decisions today based on our past experience. Family Reconcile's mentoring model is really a transformation of that mindset to make decisions based on your future self. So we want you to get making decisions based on your future self, not on your past. And when we can do that and lay the groundwork for that, which we do through our 6-month model there, now you see that transformation start to take place. And in addition to that, we're also looking at connection. How are we with ourselves first? You got to connect with yourself first. And then from there, you move out to your family. From there, you move out to society.
And I bet that you're anyone with addiction that you've been working with, the last thing they want to do is connect with themselves, because they have to then dig down to all those
That's
things
right.
underneath. And why am I using?
That's right. Fear. So on a spectrum, there's a spectrum that we use sometimes, and it relates to what I just said about most of us making decisions based on our past. So that's actually a study where 85%, so 8 to 9 out of every 10 people, make decisions on a spectrum somewhere their whole life, every day, somewhere between anger and fear. 85% of us make decisions based every day somewhere between there. And what we try to do is help people to see that through a transformational process, you can get onto the other side of fear. And what's on the other side of fear, gentlemen? Joy, contentment, gratitude. So you can get there. And I think most of us, there isn't a person alive that wouldn't say, well, I want joy. I want contentment. I want gratitude. But getting there is an entirely different thing, right? And so most people say it, but they're not committed to that because of what you were saying, Jason, because they may be hiding from things internally. And so that you see how that fear, they're afraid to confront things in themselves. So that fear keeps them stuck making decisions today based on their past.
What is the work that you folks are doing with people in that area as far as coming to those? We got to admit it and come to that realization. And what's the process once they're willing to commit to that process of confronting these fears?
Good question. So maybe I can talk a little bit about the process, because it usually comes down to two things when people are asking, okay, what is Family Reconcile really? What do they really do? So maybe we can start with what's the end result that we're looking, that we seek to achieve. And then I'll give you the process by which we do that. Is that okay? Okay. So the end result is a more confident, self-sufficient person who lives each day with specific intention. And that's a fundamental part of the transformation, is living each day with specific intention. And when you do that, when you live each day with specific intention, you take more control over your decisions and the outcomes. You're in control of your outcomes. It's not somebody else or something else controlling those daily decisions. So that specific intention in a person living with that each day is the end result. How do we achieve that with somebody? We do that through our 6-month mentoring model, and we break that down into 3 phases. The first phase is an empathic assessment. So we assess the individual or the family, because we'll work with an individual, we'll work with an entire family. So the empathic assessment is an assessment of what are the life conditions? We're not just talking about the physical conditions, although that is a factor. We're talking about the overall life conditions. How do they make decisions? Mm-hmm. What is their decision-making process? So we try to get inside there to see, how they go about making decisions. And we start putting, what we call an avatar together. It's who they are, whether they know it or not. And we know how to do that. We know how to do that through certain questionings, draw out certain things. So it's the empathic assessment. That's phase one. Once we do that, and we say empathic and not sympathetic or not just assessment. An empathic assessment is not there to judge or to say, well, I agree with that or I don't agree. It has nothing to do with that. It just has to do with information and saying, wow, okay, so we see that, we understand that. So you're rephrasing and you're repeating and you're helping the individual to understand that you're hearing them. That's what they need to be. I mean, a big part of fear is, what if I say this and what's the reaction going to be? So that empathic assessment, just to highlight that's the reason why we keep that word in there, because it's just there to listen and to understand on our part. Phase two is where the real groundwork is laid for the transformation, for the intentional thinking. And we do that primarily through technique. Our main technique is through journaling. Through intent. We're not just talking about randomly writing things. We're not talking about your sister's diary. We're not talking about those things. We're talking about specific daily intentional writing, where we set intentions or goals, if you want to call them that, at least one, no more than 3. And we do this and so what we're doing is we're creating behaviors. We're overriding a previous program of behavior, right? That got them into trouble with their decisions. We're overriding that program with intentional behaviors. And when those intentional behaviors over 6 months become routine for them, you now have a habit. So you've taught behavior that is now transitioned into habit. That's where the transformation takes place. That's phase 2. The last phase is phase 3. It's our integration into really what makes Family Reconcile unique, which is we are building a community, not just a community, but a society of individuals who are connected. So when you come out of them and you interact with others during the 6 months, primarily virtually, but it can be in person, but it's primarily virtually. We use a software, a wonderful software, almost tailor-made for us, called Circle. And Circle is a community building platform, and we use that for our community, our private community. So as people slowly integrate, 3-4 months into the mentoring, they slowly integrate into this community supportive environment, and they begin to engage with people, maybe have conversations. They're starting to what we call build a tribe. So these people are interacting in a way they weren't interacting 4 months before, when they were isolated and afraid. And so now we've laid this groundwork. We have some new behaviors there. These behaviors are becoming habits. And so now there's a little of confidence. And so now let me reach out and tell Jason that I appreciated what he said when he made this comment in this forum. And so we create this arena for engagement and support, and it's all about, and I'm going to come to this, and I'm going to wrap this up, and you can ask some questions. It's all about association. Okay, it's all about, people are trying to, how do we cure this, and how do we change it? And I'll tell you how it is. It's through association. Jim Rohn said, we are the average sum of the 3, 4, 5 people we spend the most time with. You're not the peak of them. You're the average sum of the three. So if you're dealing with some sort of substance abuse, let's say, just as an example, this applies to everybody in relationships. It doesn't have to just be substance abuse, but if you're dealing with substance abuse and the people that you are associating with are dealing with that, you're not the peak of that group. You're the average sum of that group. So if you are going to change, yes, there may be some biological things that we need to address. There may be, but it's generally about behaviors, becoming new behaviors and association. And if you can elevate your association, to 100 times who you are, you will become the average sum of that association. So that's what Family Reconcile is building. So it's not just, hey, here's the mentoring models for your own personal transformation. Now, once you're there, look at this community of associates you have. And we have some pretty profound people in there. We have people that come in and give TEDx type talks because of our journalistic connections. We have some real thought leaders that'll come in once a month and give a TEDx, like just to our community. It's an empowerment thing. So they're already, they've transformed. They're into it. This is, my life has changed. And now they're associating with people they would have never probably associated with before. And that's the beauty. So it's those three phases. So this isn't work. This isn't, hey, here's this mentoring model and you need to add it to your list, right? But we're going to, no. The mentoring model is meant to alleviate unnecessary work. It's meant to give you, it's meant to alleviate those things. One well-known gentleman said he became the success that he became overall when he realized the difference between what's important and what's urgent. Mm-hmm. And he goes, when I was able to see that what's important is not always what's urgent, that's what really opened up. And that's what we're doing. You may think this is urgent, and maybe it is urgent. Doesn't guarantee that it's important. So we're going to get you to focus on the important things. The urgent things may or may not fit into that. But it's a freeing, not an additional thing. It's a freeing. And we just seeing phenomenal results. So I'm going to not talk anymore. That we're seeing phenomenal results. So that's the proof to us.
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to think of who am I the average sum of? Who do I hang out with?
Me and your dog.
I know, right? My dog,
yeah.
brother-in-law.
You have an amazing family unit. But what you said there, one of the things there's two things that stuck out to me. I want to start first with the importance of mentorship. It's much like with me working the program or anyone else with AA. That's what the sponsor is. Or, they're going to the group, that connection. So what are you seeing as far as the importance of a mentor? And my second part of that is there any ever pushback? I know for me, when I'm still going through the process of accepting a compliment or that something I did help somebody and was just a service, I'm very much still in that, okay, what do you want from me kind of thing. So.
Okay, great question. First of all, thank you for asking that. I go into a little bit of this, and I try not to touch on people's toes. But if you go and you look at, you hear the word coach, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's coaching everywhere. Executive coach and life coach and personal coach and coach this and coach that. But how often do you hear the term mentor? You may hear it occasionally, but you do not hear it saturated like the term coaches. So one of the things, that always intrigued me, when we were putting the model together, people go, oh, so you're a coach. And I go, what? No, see, coaching is directive. Coaching is, okay, do this and go over there. And when you do that, this is what's going to happen. So you have somebody directing you. And when you have a coaching structure, you also have a power structure. You have the coach, and then you have who's being coached. Okay. The fundamental difference between coaching, there's a few differences, but the fundamental difference to me between coaching and mentoring, and the reason why mentoring is superior, especially for what we do, is because we alleviate that power structure. So when you have a mentor, you don't necessarily have that power structure in place because you're doing things together. It's not directive. It's not go over there and do this. It's, hey, let's pick this up. And let's go over there together, and then let's see what happens. And then we'll figure out what to do together. So you're right here side by side. It's not the directive. It's not a directive thing. Here's in our experience, and this is why, and I'm not knocking coaches, and I'm not knocking therapists, and I'm not knocking psychologists. Okay. When you go to see somebody, because you're trying to seek mental, you're trying to get some mental health support, and there's wonderful psychologists and therapists out there. But tell me if this isn't true. When you go, you talk, they listen, they give you things to think about, perhaps even things to try and do. And then what happens when the session's over? You go out the door and you are left to apply those things. You are left on your own to apply those things until the next session. In mentoring, you're not left to apply anything. You're doing it with the individual. You are there walking hand in hand with whatever that directive is. So I'm listening to you, Jason, or I'm listening to Mikey, and I say, okay, have you ever thought about this? That's interesting. Maybe we should do this. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. And then you don't walk out the door. You and I go and do it together. Okay, so most people learn not because they've been told what to do. They learn because they were shown how to do it. Mm-hmm. And now some therapists and psychologists will show you in a particular session how to do something, but they won't show you over a sustained period of time how to do something. That's the fundamental difference between mentoring and coaching. The fundamental difference between a therapist and a psychologist in our model. We understand that if we're going to affect the transformation to a new mindset and a new behavior and new habits, we have to do it together over at least 6 months. That's where the transformation occurs.
But the other thing that stood out to me was where you're talking about, someone maybe within the community giving another person some praise. Have you had any people that maybe because of trauma, that there is a pushback to some of that stuff, that they're still maybe in a mindset of what does this person want from me? Because, and this is an assumption, I'm going to guess you're dealing oftentimes with people that are living almost in a constant state of fight or flight mode.
So again, great question. That is why the integration phase is the last phase. That's why we don't integrate straight up front. That's why the one-on-one mentoring work is in the groundwork, in the connection with yourself that we work on, the reconnecting with yourself, even just finding yourself. Okay. That's why that's first. And then even the second phase is still really the one-on-one or one-to-family work. Let me give you an example. So there's an individual, great therapist. So he was prescribing, I forgot the particular drug he was prescribing. He had this woman, great lady. Okay. So here's what happens in many cases. She's dealing with these internal issues and she doesn't know quite how to deal with them. So he provides the medication to help her with that. And she feels better for a little while, right? And then she starts to feel not so good again. And so he ups the dosage, right? And she feels better for a little while. And then she doesn't feel so good again. And then he prescribes the maximum amount by law. And she starts to feel better again. But then she gets to that place where it's not really working. Now, where do you go? Right. So here's one thing that he decided to do. He said he had this like area in the back of his office, that back area. It was just shrubbery. I mean, there's nothing there. It was like a little retaining wall and there was just dirt and tumbleweeds. So he says, let me do something. I'll continue to prescribe the medication, to you. But I've got 5 or 6 other patients. And on Wednesday, we're going to come out here and we're just going to take these tumbleweeds and throw them in just kind of take the shrubbery and not even do anything, not even beautify, just take the shrubbery out and put it, put it in this trash can out here. She, would you come for that? She says, yeah, I'll come for that. So he invited 7, 5 showed up. Okay. And they just cleaned up the shrubbery. He says, okay, now, next week, hey, since we're doing this next week, who wants to plant? I'd like to plant some flowers here. I'll even go get the flowers. Who wants to come in next week? So the next Wednesday afternoon, all 7 of the original ones that he invited were there. And so they were doing some tilling and he's observing this whole time. And everybody was kind of working independent, maybe a little, sentence or word to one person or whatever. After about 4 or 5 weeks, they were meeting every Wednesday and doing this. They had essentially planted a garden, and about 4 weeks into it, he saw them starting to form into little groups. Like 2 or 3 were standing around holding, sitting like almost like Caltrans, right? Just sitting on a shovel, not doing anything, holding the shovel up. But he observed this, that they were starting to talk. 4 or 5 weeks into this, they weren't talking to anybody. They were barely talking when they first started. Now 4 weeks just into meeting every Wednesday and just cleaning up some shrubbery and planting some flowers, they were starting to form their little tribes, their little groups. They were connecting. They were connecting. And one of the ladies, after about 3 months, and they just continued to do this, one of the ladies after about 3 months says, you know what? I guess when we were planting this garden, the garden started to bloom. They were like, we didn't realize it was really us who were starting to bloom. How's, so when I'm telling you, I mean, I get
I'm assuming they
when I
were
tell that story.
financially compensated for planting his garden.
You know what? That's a good question. I'll have to follow up with that. I'm not sure because that could be slave labor. You're right.
I was going to say, this sounds like a scam. No, I'm just kidding. I get it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the woman, this particular woman in that group, by the end of, it was about 4 or 5 months later.
Sure.
She had reduced back the dosage to a point where she no longer was even taking that medication.
And I think right there, it hits back again, that purpose. She, at least on that day, at that time, within this group for this goal, she was serving of a purpose.
So yeah, that's right. She found, that purpose was there. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? I mean, you have all these fears and everything that you create in your mind, keeping you from doing something. So for us, right, perhaps, and I'm speaking for all of us, maybe I shouldn't do that. For us, that's such a simple concept.
Sure.
But for others who are dealing with internal issues and trauma and you're, you can't see the woods through the trees, right? When all of those phrases exist for the reason of understanding that when you're in it, it's often hard to see the way out. And so how valuable is a mentor? How valuable is somebody who's not just going to come and say, hey, go over there. You make a left at that tree and a right at the next tree, and then you'll find your way out of the forest.
Right.
Do you want that? Or would you want Mikey to come along and say, I'll show you the way out, grab my shoulder, hold on to me, and we'll walk out of here together because I know the way. Man. So which one would you take? I know which one I would take.
Oh yeah. Plan B for sure. The second option. And I see it with people, first timers to groups, their perception is I've heard everything. It's a cult. You're going to indoctrinate me in some religion or whatever it is. And like you said, all of the things we can build up in our mind, and it's been anything but. And some people, they get their sobriety or, recover mental health wise, and they don't need one. And that's fine because there's, different paths to it. But, I find it imperative. And for me, mentorship has meant everything.
So, and that's so well said. And I can only, I can only add to that's, that is the core. And again, I go back to that's the core. We believe that's the answer. And not only do we believe that, the results are proving to us that's the answer. Yeah. It's reconnecting. It's reconnecting with yourself and then reconnecting with others. And as soon as you have that, we're not talking about major fundamental lifelong connections. We're talking about just the ability to stand around and have a conversation because you were planting flowers. And connecting at that level can literally pull you out of what you were relying on earlier just to live day by day. So and I don't mean this in a brash way. I'm just saying, don't try to tell us that it's something else other than connection. We already know that that's what it is. So that's why we exist. We said we need to, why is nobody talking about this? Why is nobody doing this? And that's why we kind of created the model to also fit really aftercare. So we got people coming out of treatment. And I even saw this on Dr. Phil like a year ago. Dr. Phil was dealing with somebody who was this girl that was coming out of some cocaine. He was trying to get her help because her mother and sister were trying to get her help. And he says the most critical juncture in a person's recovery is the day that they leave a successful treatment program. Because most of the relapse happens between day one and 6 months after they come out of the treatment center. Mm-hmm. He says for one reason, structure. Mm-hmm. So that's the need. And there's nothing there. They say, oh, you can go join a church group or go find there's nothing there. That is the niche we come right into. We are that structure. So it's not just the successful completion of breaking a habit, gentlemen. It's the formation and the transformation of establishing new behaviors that become new habits that get you thinking, making decisions today based on who Jason wants to be in the future, based on who Mikey wants to be in the future, based on who Brett wants to be in the future. I've never personally dealt with addiction to substances, but I've been addicted to people pleasing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've had trauma because my poor judgment, because of how I was behaving, because I was, swayed in this way, created trauma. I had to come through an Everest type personal difficulty, 5 years ago. And I just thought, why do we do this to one another? Why do we, you look at the world and everybody attacks. No wonder nobody wants to take any accountability, because if I take accountability, I'm going to get smashed.
Yeah.
So, what happened to compassion, and what happened to empathy, and what happened to connection? Because I'll tell you what, if you want joy and you want gratitude and you want contentment in your life, you're not going to get it on your own. And you're not going to get it attacking other people and disconnecting from people. You're going to get it through meaningful connection. That's the road there.
And I couldn't agree more. And I'm glad you brought up your own individual struggles, because I really wanted to ask, with your passion and fire for this, why are you doing what you're doing?
I can tell you this, Family Reconcile, if I was to create a single avatar, the avatar is me. And in that avatar is the trauma. I didn't have too much trauma. My parents, I had really good parents. Yeah. They did really good. I lived what you'd probably call a boring life, right? I didn't have anything I was a good kid and didn't get in trouble a lot. But my parents divorced when I was about 20, and I was the oldest of three siblings. And I don't think I really recognized how hard. I know I didn't recognize how that impacted me decision-wise, right? Because this dynamic changed, and I had many things going really well. But I didn't realize until later years, I made some pretty poor decisions. And I think those poor decisions were largely because I just was making those decisions by myself with my own lousy thinking on things that I didn't realize was lousy. So, I had that. And then it doesn't matter what your intentions are. I had the best of intentions. So I do this thing with the best of intentions, and it blows up in my face. And then you take the element that I was talking about earlier, where people, there's no empathy or compassion there. They just label you. Oh, you're this.
Yep.
Okay. Well, for a person with my disposition, who's heart-centered and who's doing things, laying his heart out there, taking risk, is getting pummeled by people who don't take any risk. It took me years to figure that out. So this mentoring model is really based on all of that trauma that I experienced, and then saying, what needs to be done here? Because if nobody else is going to do it, then I need to do it. And that's where that empathic, connective, and it starts with this. If people have had whatever with me, I don't hate anybody. I don't dislike. I don't. If somebody who thrashed me before came to me and says, "You're this," I'd be like, "No, I'm not that." But can we? Let's talk about it, right? That's the foundation right there. I said I have to live. What I did is this. I said I have to live opposite of what somebody may say that I am. I can't fight it. I can't argue it. I have to live opposite of what that is. That'll be the answer, right? That's the answer to whatever the complaint is from somebody. So when I started understanding that, it gave me more control over my actions, and it helped me to kind of back off from having to appear a certain way to somebody who may think that I'm something else, right? So, that's some pretty severe trauma, and I take full responsibility for poor decisions I made, doing this. So, but it's like, okay, well, now what do I do? Do I just go in a corner and die, or do I try to help myself, but then help others? Because I saw a need here. We need to care for one another a lot more than what we do. We need to connect. And I'm going to be a leader in that. And that's where Family Reconcile came from.
I'll be damned.
Wow.
I love it. What what's the spectrum of folks that you've worked with? I know before we started recording, you were talking about, some of the methods that are utilized in prison and things like that as it relates to connectivity. But what spectrum of people are you getting? Family situations and just individuals?
Yeah, so it's broad. The spectrum is broad. I mean, we've worked with late teens all the way to 75, 80-year-old parents who are nearing, probably what they're thinking is the end of their life. And
Sure.
this disconnection from a child is literally killing them. And we get a lot of parents and children that don't get along, but then the children use their children, which are the grandchildren, as a tool. And we're seeing grandparents just okay, if my son or daughter doesn't want to deal with me, but don't take my grandchild away. I mean, just real heart wrenching. We get this whole spectrum. We get people coming that are just, or we're being introduced to people that are just dealing with dysfunction in family and coming out of addiction. I mean, the whole broad range that you can imagine is what we've seen thus far. And we're new. We're only a couple of years in this model of doing this. And we've already seen that kind of broad. There is no, this is the main thing that it is, or it's just all kinds of scenarios. But let me give you the research on this.
Please.
The one group that deals with estrangement and dysfunction and disconnection the most of all the groups is the wealthy, the wealthy class. And the studies gave two specific reasons for this. I think this was at an Oxfam study conducted by Oxfam. The two specific reasons are that the wealthy are generally higher educated. Okay, they have multiple. Their education is on the higher side, and with that comes, quote unquote, the Enlightenment. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying, quote unquote, comes, hey, I'm more educated. Hey, you didn't deal with me right. Hey, there are things and so that enlightenment that comes from higher education affects that class, and they start now making decisions about their relationships that those in lower educational, roadmaps may not necessarily take. That was the one. The second reason was they fall back on the wealth. So the wealth gives them a false, and understand this. I hope the listeners understand this. The wealth gives them a false sense of security. So it's not security. Wealth doesn't give you security in that sense. It's a false sense of security. So they fell back on that. So the wealthy, they found, between the education and the money, were quick to make decisions to get rid of relationships that they didn't see as valuable, that other classes did not do, or did not do as quickly. So the wealthy are the ones who suffer from this the most by class, by distinction. So what we did is we said, okay, look, we have to do something. And we can't always encapsulate everybody. So we have to create a model that allows us to get the best results. You get the best results from those who are most committed. So generally the model was really created for those in that class because, you have to be committed. And we give the example of people that do, resolutions at the beginning of the year. They say, I want to read more books, or I want to spend more time with family, or I want to lose weight, or I want to get more. And then they start out in a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks into it. They kind of revert back to those old patterns. Most. Imagine if you set out on those resolutions, but you had somebody alongside you. The success rate for achievement goes dramatically up to the roof when you have somebody working alongside you on those resolutions. So you have to commit. You can't put a value on relationships. Okay, any financial commitment that somebody makes to enter the Family Reconcile model, mentoring model, that's their value commitment. They're committing to. That's the process. That's the value of the commitment to the process. That's not the value of the relationship. That's not the value of the end result, because the end result is priceless. if you can transform yourself and live and be the person that you want to be in the future, making decisions today based on who that person is in the future, that's a priceless transformation. You don't put value on that. So, just to, people can get all that information on our website and whatnot too, but that's really what it is in terms of, we really help people to say, okay, I know you say what you want, but let's talk about commitment, because that's the difference on whether or not you'll achieve it or not.
Well, I'm seeing that not only in my life with, of course, parenthood, my sobriety, my relationship, or everything else, but just with that of what brings me purpose, where I feel I'm of service and where I am of purpose to, whether it's ego inflated or just reality or the feedback that we get like, hey, thanks for that episode. That was great. Made me think differently about myself. So, I understand what you mean by commitment, and we're kind of in a society, don't like it, doesn't feel good, we can just jump over here.
Yeah, that's right. And so for the listener base, really hone in on this. It is mainly about the association. Yes, there's a model here that we lay for transformation and mindset. We're creating new behaviors to become habits, right? I've said that 10 times, and I think everybody gets that. But the real kicker for it, the thing that really creates it, is the association. It's that elevation of the people that you're spending time with. That's it. So it's not work. We're not adding something to you. You're coming into a society or a family where you can do a little bit of self-observation and your own, a little bit of self-work in your own way with somebody who's empathic with you. And then once you're ready, we introduce you into this society and this community. And boy, that's where you see that transformation really physically. You see it, because it's the association. That is the secret. That is the key. It is the association of the society or the group. That's what we offer. And that, again, has no value, because, blood makes you related, guys, but loyalty makes you family.
I heard that.
If people want to know more about what you're doing, Brett, where can they get any information?
So, we have our main source of information other than doing programs like this is our website, which is www.familyreconcile.com. We put as much, maybe we can put endless information up there. We put as much information up there as we can to help somebody recognize, hey, is this the right thing for me? I think there's enough information for that. So we have, we have our blog. We have some success stories that people can read about, where they see how we've worked with somebody. We have podcast, we have our own little podcast up there where we talk about certain qualities that are needed to connect with others. So we have plenty of information up there. There's a webinar up there where they can see how we go through the, kind of what our philosophy is behind what we're doing. All of that is meant to do one thing, to really just get somebody to say, I need to look into this more. And so they can schedule something on the Calendly, aspect that we have, the Calendly within the app, because the main thing is just, I want to talk, schedule a call and let's talk so I can see, whether this is the right thing for you, or maybe I can, direct you somewhere else. So that's how individuals can find us if they're individually thinking about doing this. Obviously, we have certain treatment centers we're already working with, and we come in that last week of aftercare. They kind of introduce us into that. That's where we get introduced, like, okay, you're leaving. Now, what's the plan? Well, here's a plan. Here's 6 more months of something, is this right for you? So that's how we work it in that realm. And then, obviously for any of the listeners, you don't have to have come out of treatment. You don't even have to be in treatment. You don't have to be anything. You can just be somebody who's saying, look, I need to work on connection. I need to transform. I need to make decisions based on my future self, not on my past. And I don't even know who my future self is. That person should call. So it's anybody who's thinking about anything. We just encourage them to call. And through discussion, through dialogue, we can figure out, a path. And if we can't help, boy, we'll certainly give you some suggestions, even if you don't even if you don't work with us, we're going to give you suggestions on where you can go and where you can look and what you can do to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a big part of letting go of the fear of the future, because it hadn't been written yet, but we can embrace a path to head us in a direction we want to go.
Right. So you can't really transform, right, if you're spending too much time in the past. Transformation is all about now and into the future. Does the past play a part? Yeah, because it gives us a reference point.
Sure.
But we only use the past for reference.
Sure.
Most of our thought patterns are going to be on today and on tomorrow. Matthew McConaughey has this real neat thing that he does. He talks about it, that he's his future hero. Somebody asked him about his hero, who his hero was. And Matthew said, "I'm my own hero in the future." And he goes, I'm my hero in 5 years. And I was like, that's it. McConaughey gets it. That's what we're dealing with. And so that person who interviewed him on that particular interview, 5 years went by, interviewed him again and said, "So did you get there? So are you you made it to your hero?" And he goes, "No, my hero's myself 5 years from now." He pushed it out another 5. And he goes, meaning he'll never get there. Because he's always searching. He's always working, not searching. He's always working towards that future self. I mean, somebody said, if you're not embarrassed by who you were 6 months ago, then you're not learning enough. Right. And that's true of me. Are you the same person you were 6 months ago? Maybe on some levels you are, but there's no way that you can be. Okay. So do you see where the intention comes in? If we're going to change, whether we intentionally want to change, why not intentionally change? Why not intentionally transform? Why not intentionally become that person? And that's what McConaughey's doing. And I see that in his life. I see a distinction between him and others and how he operates. And I think it's largely due to how he views himself, and he's making decisions. He sees that future person, but he's not saying, well, when I get there, I'm going to do this. No, the decisions he makes today are as if he is already that person 5 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Conscious living versus subconscious living.
That's right. You're going to react, right? People think they run around, okay, I got to pay the bills. I got to go do this. I got to take the car in to get fixed. And people think that's intentionally living. No, that's, and there's nothing wrong with this. What I'm saying is that's just carrying out responsibilities. But carrying out responsibilities is not intentional living. You're just reacting. So part of in that phase 2 of our transformational and establishing the behavior, that's what the journaling is for, is because you're living each day with specific intention. What are we going to do today? And then at the end of the day, we're going to take a few minutes and say, instead of scrolling through Facebook and all, and all this, we're going to say, well, what did we do? What did we learn? What did we achieve? And what are we going to try different tomorrow with tomorrow's intentions? And boy, you start doing that over 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and somebody's right there doing it with you, right? And then, then that's where the behavior comes from. I'm going to say, here's another point. I told you I'd talk too much, and I've asked for forgiveness. I want you to think about this and this is something we tell those that we're working with when we're journaling with them, and they're establishing this new kind of habit that they're like, wow, I didn't realize that this was like this. And we say, okay, think about this. Let's say you have a family, you got your kids, and and hypothetically, God forbid, you get run over by a bus one day, right? Okay, so you got your wife and you got your children, and then there's a funeral service for you, and then people reminisce, right? They go up and they say, well, I remember Brett, and he was this, or he was that, or they have these funny experiences, right? And you have your family there, and they're doing the same thing. Imagine if you wrote in a journal a few minutes a day about your intentions. This is where I'm at today. Here's the date. I start off every journal I do on the first page with, here's the date and here's the 5 things that I'm looking to deal with most. And I go through about a journal about once every 2 to 3 months. Okay. So, and I say, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And then I write it, towards those accomplishments, and, I write in the journal. Now imagine if you did that for 5, 10 years, you'd have a shelf of journals, right, about your life during that 5 to 10 year. So imagine if you did it for 20 years. Imagine if you did it only for a year and something happened to you and your children go into that into that room where those journals are that dad had. And they don't have to remember stuff from memory. They can open up the journal and say, and they're looking at dad's life, or they're looking at mom's life, right? And they're reading, and what are they doing? You're not there, but you're connecting with your child because of what you wrote about your life. That probably involves them too, and things that you would write in the journal. So that's why we call it legacy journaling. So I'm giving you a term that we're using. I'm giving you an inside term that we use in what we're doing. It's called legacy journaling. Why? Because you're leaving your legacy. You're not just writing, you're leaving a legacy. And could you imagine the connection you would create with your children, your extended family for generations if you left something like that behind just because you wrote little things for 10 minutes?
Well, Brett, we're going to shift gears on you. Are you good with that?
Pretty hard
All
left
right.
turn coming up here, Brett.
Pretty hard
Okay.
left turn. After
Okay,
that kind of like...
I'm going to go with the Rams.
Oh, gosh. Brett, no, I am the biggest Bengals fan this Sunday because I'm a Niner fan. So I am the biggest Bengals fan this Sunday.
Well, by the time this drops, and people are hearing it, the Super Bowl has been decided. So one of you's right.
Is that who you want, or that's who you think is just the better team?
No, I actually like Stafford. I think Stafford deserves it. Burrow's got a lot coming his way.
You're right. He does deserve it. He's a hard worker. He's been in the league for a while, but I'm still upset about what happened a week and a half ago when they didn't beat the Niners. The Niners beat themselves. Let's say that.
Yeah. Most people think Garoppolo beat the Niners.
It wasn't Garoppolo's fault. There was no offensive line. He didn't have time to throw the ball. He can't throw the ball if there's nobody there to protect him. Jimmy, we're going to get to the random questions in a minute, but now you opened up a can of worms. Jimmy has done his share of fucking up, if you will, but that particular series of the final drive, that was not his fault. As soon as he hiked the ball, they were in his face. Tom Brady, in my opinion, the best quarterback to ever play the game of football, he couldn't even have done anything. There's not enough time. Just wouldn't have been able to work.
So easy to rile Mikey up, isn't it? It's so easy.
Just talk
to
about the
rile.
Niners. That's it, man. Just the Niners. Or my dog.
It's your dog. It's your family, your dog, and football. Not necessarily in that order.
Right. I'm passionate.
Right.
About the things that I care about.
Yeah.
That's why we love you.
Exactly.
And that's
it's okay, brother.
I love you all.
It's okay. I got my things too. Like if Mikey just went, what'd you think of the end of that Formula One season?
Jason,
Lewis Hamilton got screwed.
I was going to say, what do you think about Lewis Hamilton? And then it would have been, the same thing, same chapter, different story, same story, different chapter.
But that's why I'm a Raiders fan, because I just I can accept disappointment. It's okay. It's okay.
That's right.
Shoot. Some other fun random questions.
Okay.
I always like this one because you were talking about legacy, and I got silent there because then it got me thinking about my kids. So thanks for that one. You almost got tears, Brett. You almost.
Right.
With your legacy, let's say someone turned your story into a movie. Who would you love to have play you?
Wow, man. You guys this is hot seat stuff. Who would I have play me? Man, you guys, that's so good. In my story, who would I have play me? I'm kind of I'm a retro guy. I like older movies. I like the epics. I like stuff like that. So, I'm thinking I'll give you 4 favorite actors. Peter O'Toole, and this will date me and show you, what a Renaissance guy I am. Peter O'Toole, Richard Burton, Chuck Heston, and Stephen Boyd.
I could see Charlton Heston. Another one I was thinking, I was thinking Henry Fonda.
Henry Fonda.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a good one. I like the movies they did. I lose myself in those movies. I mean, Ben-Hur, and I am those characters. That's why those resonate with me, because I am those characters.
Yeah. Yeah, that hero's journey, right?
Yeah, I'm on a ship that's sinking and I'm going to die, but I don't deserve to be there. But nobody cares that Brett doesn't deserve to be there. It's just, what are you going to do? So that resonates with my life, and that's why I would choose a character like that.
Mikey.
So those are your actors. Give me top 3 favorite bands.
Top 3 favorite bands. Wow, that's good, man. You guys, and you pulled this. This is a fast one because you didn't allow me to prepare for this. But that's okay. So Eagles is number 1.
Oh, okay.
So, I definitely Eagles number 1. Bands. So it's not solo artists. It's got to be a
solo.
band.
It could be solo.
Bands are solo artists.
Okay. So yeah, I'm going to have to go on band. It'd be the Eagles, and then probably Pink Floyd.
Oh, never go wrong with Pink Floyd.
And then I actually like a Stockton boy. I like Chris Isaac, who's out of Stockton. So
yeah,
I followed Chris. So those would be my top 3 band and solo artists.
That's literally what I grew up on. My dad was like AC/DC, Van Halen, Def Leppard, and my mom was Eric Clapton, Zeppelin, Pink Floyd.
Right.
So I got the best of both worlds growing up.
That's awesome. I mean, I probably could have done the cliche Beatles because I got tons of Beatles stuff. I love the Beatles.
That's the
but it's like I know I had to throw something else in there.
You have to, because everybody likes at least one song from the Beatles. Everybody does. If you don't, then you can't be trusted with literally anything.
Don't go anywhere near my kids or dogs.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, I'm over here getting picked up at Catholic school when my dad's blaring Highway to Hell. I love it.
All right, I'm going to go with the James Lipton question. I don't think we need this one, but I love James Lipton when he asks questions. So if God is real, or as we've conceptualized, and you reach the pearly gates and you're welcomed into heaven, what do you think God would say to you? What would you want him to say?
Okay. So see, you just did it there, because there's what he would say and there's what I want him to say. So I'm going to go with what I would want him to say.
Okay.
Because I don't want to speak for him.
Yeah, right.
Here's what I would want him to say. And this is my this is fundamental to me. I think, history is littered with, religion and religious belief and doctrine, and you see how religion has played into mankind's life over thousands of years, right? So, and people get real worked up with one another over doctrine. You've seen this, right? So what I've done is I've said, and I have the doctrine I believe, but I don't really try to go down the doctrinal road. What I do is I've boiled it down to this. What does the creator of the universe want to see from me? What does he want to see from me? How do I be most like him? And the way that I can be most like him is to do good for other people on a daily basis, from the littlest act to a significant act. It doesn't matter. If I can do something good for somebody else today, just one person, then I'm being most like him. And that's what I'm trying to be like. So I would want him to say, Brett, I want him to say that you lived your life trying to do good for others, even in the littlest of ways, because you thought that was being most like me. And I appreciated that. And I love you for that. That's what I would like to hear him say.
Awesome.
What do you think he'd say?
He'd probably say, probably say, nice knowing you, but you didn't, you blew it here and you blew it there. And you blew it over here.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't think that's what his intent would be, or those type of words at all. Mike, you got one more before we ask Brett for the final words?
I got one more. If you were to have dinner with anybody, living or not, who would it be?
Gosh, you guys, come on.
And yes, Paul McCartney can be in that. I know you wanted to leave out the Beatles, but,
So I can have dinner with anybody.
Anybody.
Or a meal. Anybody living or not living anymore. Okay.
Lincoln.
Yeah. So for me, I'm gonna have to go with Jesus.
Yeah. right?
Everybody else is profound and can have had a profound. I can think of other people who had profound impact on the world, but he'd be the only perfect person who had a profound impact on the world. So what you could learn from him would be more than what I could learn from anybody else. So why would I go with anybody else other than that?
Boy,
that would be my reasoning.
I love that answer because we've had the Lamar Odom said Jesus before, but I like your answer way better because it's the perfect person and knows everything about the world. So why would you want it with anybody else? Love it. Mic drop.
Wow!
All right,
that's my first mic drop.
Well, don't. That's a nice mic. Don't drop that one.
Don't drop that. We could tell that one's nice.
Yeah, like the Blue Yeti or something going there. Those are good mics.
That's what it is. It's the Blue Yeti.
I know my equipment.
I know my mic.
You don't show up. You don't show up to knocking doors down with just anything.
Brett, if you could leave us with some final thoughts, just words of encouragement for anyone out there, maybe looking to get into quote unquote that higher self, the next plane, or struggling with mental health or addiction or whatever it may be. What could you lend?
So I would say this, don't hesitate to take, no matter what you're going through, no matter what you're dealing with, no matter what your past has been. No matter what, if you're dealing with something, it's likely about connection. Okay. It's not about, that's likely the root cause. And if you understand that, regardless of fear, just take a baby step. And that baby step could be reaching out to us. And we'll be happy to talk to you. And we'll be happy to go down that road with you. So I would just encourage all the listeners to just reach out. It all starts with a discussion. There's not commitment to anything. It just starts with a discussion and understanding in learning. So for the broad spectrum of everybody, if this show and what we've talked about has resonated with you about connection, then just simply reach out. And then I'll end it more with for those that may be dealing with treatment or thinking about treatment or have had treatment in their past or whatever. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection.
Is that your second mic drop, Brett?
That's 2 mic drops.
That's your second mic drop.
Hey,
you heard it here first. I'm knocking doors down.
Wow. 50 years of no mic drops. And then I got 2 mic drops in 45 seconds.
It's incredible, man.
Hey, Brett, Lovett. Thank you, good sir.
Hey, you guys, I appreciate the platform. I wish all your listeners well, and they can reach out if they want to. And we're here to connect. So if you're into connection, we're your people.